When Emma moved into the new house her parents had gifted her, she felt like life was finally falling into place. The walls smelled of fresh paint. The backyard had a little garden her mom planted herself, and every corner reminded her of love and new beginnings. Ryan smiled when they first walked in together, wrapping an arm around her and saying, "This is where our forever starts." She believed him, but forever started changing faster than she imagined. Just a few days after moving in, his mom, Margaret, began visiting uninvited. She would bring boxes of decorations, insisting the curtains were too dull and the furniture not suitable for a family home. Emma tried to be polite, even when Margaret replaced her kitchenware without asking. One afternoon, Emma came home from work to find Margaret rearranging the living room while Ryan laughed with her. "Don't worry, honey," he said. "Mom just wanted to make the place more welcoming." Emma bit her tongue, not wanting to start an argument. But something inside her felt wrong. It wasn't their house to change. A week later, Ryan's dad, Charles, started introducing the house to relatives as Ryan's first home. At first, Emma brushed it off, thinking maybe it was just pride. But during Sunday dinner, Charles raised a toast and said, "We're so proud that Emma's parents gave our son this beautiful home. It's a blessing to see him starting life so well." Everyone smiled except Emma. She looked at Ryan, expecting him to correct the mistake, but he stayed quiet. That silence said everything. That night, Emma asked him gently, "Why didn't you say the house is in my name?" Ryan sighed, "Babe, it's just a formality. It's ours. What's yours is mine, right?" Those words didn't sound loving. They sounded like ownership. From then on, Margaret's behavior grew worse. She began calling the house our family place and told Emma she and Charles would move in to help the young couple settle. Emma was shocked. "This isn't your home," she said quietly. Margaret's eyes narrowed. "You're only part of this family because of my son. Don't forget that." Ryan didn't defend her. He stood there, silent again. That silence felt louder than shouting. Days later, Emma noticed Ryan acting distant and secretive. Late at night, she found him in the study with papers spread across the desk. When he stepped away, she glanced down and froze. It was a property document. Her signature was forged. He was trying to transfer part of the house into both their names. Her heart broke completely. This wasn't love anymore, it was betrayal. She didn't confront him immediately. Instead, she called her lawyer and her parents the next morning. Quietly, she secured the house in a legal trust and changed every lock. When Ryan came home and realized he couldn't get in, Emma opened the door just long enough to say, "You tried to steal my home. Now you've lost me too." Then she closed the door, for good. The day Emma's parents gave her the house keys was one of the happiest moments of her life. Her mom hugged her tightly and whispered, "This is your start, sweetheart. You've earned this." Her dad smiled proudly, saying, "We just want you to have a safe and happy home." Tears filled Emma's eyes as she looked at the little white house with the blue door. It wasn't just a gift, it was a symbol of love, security, and trust. Ryan stood beside her, holding her hand. He smiled as her parents handed over the keys, but his parents, Margaret and Charles, stood in the background, watching quietly. Margaret's lips curved into a polite smile, but her eyes looked sharp, studying the house like it already belonged to her. Charles clapped Ryan on the shoulder and said, "You're a lucky man, son. Not everyone gets such a great start." His tone sounded light, but there was something cold beneath it, like he was measuring what this gift could mean for them. Inside, Emma felt a strange unease, but she pushed it away. Everyone was supposed to be happy. She showed them around the house. The bright kitchen her mom had helped design, the cozy living room, and the spare room she hoped to turn into a small art studio. Margaret kept commenting, "Oh, this would make a lovely guest room," or, "We could change this wall color to something warmer." Emma smiled politely, thinking it was harmless talk. After everyone left, Emma stood in the living room and let the quiet sink in. For the first time, she felt like she truly had something of her own. She looked around and whispered, "Home." It felt perfect. She didn't know then that the same walls would later echo with arguments and broken trust. In the following days, Ryan's parents began dropping by often. At first, Emma thought it was sweet. They brought housewarming gifts and homemade meals. But soon, their visits became frequent and unannounced. Margaret started giving little suggestions about where to put furniture or what kind of curtains to buy. When Emma gently said she liked things the way they were, Margaret would laugh softly and say, "You'll learn how to make a proper family home soon." One evening, as Emma and Ryan unpacked boxes, she noticed his phone buzzing repeatedly. It was messages from his mom, pictures of furniture she wanted for their living room. Emma asked quietly, "Why does she call it their living room?" Ryan shrugged. "She's just excited." But deep down, Emma could feel something wasn't right. The warmth in Margaret's words didn't match the way she looked at her, as if she had already decided Emma was just a temporary guest in her own home. That night, as Emma lay beside Ryan, she tried to ignore the uneasy feeling. She wanted to believe love would make everything work out. But she didn't realize that this perfect beginning was only the calm before the storm. The first few weeks after the move felt like a blur of excitement and exhaustion. Emma was still decorating the place, setting up her art corner, and trying to build a cozy home for her and Ryan. She wanted it to feel like theirs, but that feeling didn't last long. Margaret started showing up more often, sometimes without even calling first. She would walk right in, holding a tray of cookies or a new lamp, acting like she still lived there. At first, Emma tried to stay polite. She thought maybe Margaret just wanted to help. But soon, her help started to feel like control. One afternoon, Emma came home early from work and found Margaret in the living room, moving furniture around. The couch was pushed against a different wall, the rug was rolled up, and her mother-in-law Reby was humming happily as she replaced Emma's favorite curtains. "Margaret," Emma said carefully, trying not to sound angry, "I actually liked it the way it was." Margaret turned around, smiling too sweetly. "Oh, honey, I'm just making it feel more like a family home. You'll thank me later." Emma forced a smile, but her chest felt tight. Later that night, she told Ryan what happened. "She rearranged everything, Ryan." Without asking, Ryan barely looked up from his phone. "She's just trying to help, babe. You know how she is. She wants everything to be perfect for us." Emma frowned. "But it's not her house." Ryan sighed. "Emma, don't make a big deal out of this." That was the first time she realized something important. Ryan never said our house either. It was always Mom's idea, Dad's suggestion, or they think we should. His parents' opinions were starting to run everything. A few days later, Emma discovered something that made her blood run cold. Margaret had a spare key. Emma noticed it when she saw the same gold keychain with a red heart dangling from Margaret's purse. When she asked about it, Margaret smiled casually and said, "Oh, Ryan gave it to me. You never know when you might need your mother's help." Emma looked at Ryan in shock. "You gave your mom a key? Without telling me?" He shrugged. "Relax. She's family. It's not like she's breaking in." But that was exactly how it felt, like someone had broken into her space, her comfort, her independence. It didn't stop there. Margaret started dropping off groceries Emma hadn't asked for, changing kitchen supplies, and even commenting on how Emma folded laundry. It felt like Margaret was quietly taking over, one small thing at a time. Every time Emma tried to set a boundary, Ryan found a way to defend his parents. "They just care about us," he'd say. "You're overreacting." But Emma knew she wasn't. The house no longer felt peaceful. It felt like she was walking on eggshells, afraid that at any moment, someone else would decide how she should live her life inside the home that was supposed to be hers. The dinner that night was supposed to be a simple family gathering. Emma had spent the whole afternoon cooking, wanting to make a good impression and hoping things would finally feel normal. She made Ryan's favorite pasta, set the table neatly, and even lit candles to make it special. Maybe, she thought, if everyone shared a nice meal together, the tension would ease. When Margaret and Charles arrived, they came with wine and smiles that didn't reach their eyes. "You've made the place look so lovely," Margaret said as she walked through the door, glancing around like she was inspecting something she owned. Emma forced a polite smile. Ryan greeted them warmly, completely unaware of the uneasiness sitting just below the surface. Dinner started off fine. There was laughter, small talk, and stories from Ryan's childhood. Emma tried to relax. For a while, it almost felt normal. But then Charles cleared his throat, raised his glass, and said, "We're so grateful Emma's parents gifted our son this beautiful home. It's a blessing for our family." The room went silent for a second. Emma's fork froze halfway to her mouth. "Our son?" she thought. Her parents had gifted her this house. It was in her name. They had made it clear from the beginning. This was her start, her future. She looked at Ryan, waiting for him to say something. He didn't. He just smiled weakly and lifted his glass like nothing was wrong. Everyone else at the table clapped, cheering for Ryan and congratulating him. Emma sat there, stunned, her stomach twisting. She felt her cheeks grow warm, her throat tightening. It was like she wasn't even part of the moment, like she had been erased from her own story. When the noise died down, she finally whispered, "Actually, the house was a gift from my parents to me." Her voice shook, but she said it anyway. Charles chuckled, waving his hand dismissively. "Oh, sweetheart, it's all the same. You're about to be married. What's yours is his. It's a family gift." Margaret nodded eagerly, smiling at her husband's words. "Exactly. We just think it's wonderful that our family now has such a lovely home to gather in." Emma's hands tightened around her napkin. She looked at Ryan again, silently begging him to stand up for her, to tell them the truth. But he didn't. He kept eating, pretending nothing had happened. That moment hit her harder than anything else. It wasn't just about the house, it was about what he allowed. His silence felt like betrayal, like he had already chosen their side. The rest of the evening went on painfully slow. Everyone laughed and talked, but Emma barely heard them. She just sat there, forcing a smile while her heart sank. When they finally left, she cleaned up in silence. Ryan came up behind her and said softly, "You didn't have to make it awkward." Emma turned to him, her eyes cold. "I didn't make it awkward, Ryan. You did, when you let them claim something that was never theirs." That night, she realized something she had been trying to ignore. She wasn't just living with Ryan. She was living with his parents' control. And for the first time, she wondered what else he'd let them take. That night after dinner, Emma couldn't sleep. She lay awake staring at the ceiling, the words "our son," echoing in her mind again and again. Every time she replayed the scene, she felt that same sharp sting in her chest. Ryan's silence had spoken louder than anything his father said. By morning, she couldn't hold it in anymore. She found Ryan in the kitchen, sipping coffee like nothing had happened. Her voice trembled, but she forced herself to speak. "Why didn't you correct your dad last night?" Ryan looked up, confused at first, then sighed. It was just a misunderstanding. You're making it a big deal for no reason." She crossed her arms. "No reason?" He said, "My parents gifted you the house. You just sat there and let everyone believe it." He shrugged. "It's just easier this way. Everyone sees us as a couple. What's yours is mine, right?" Those words felt like a punch to her heart. Emma stared at him, searching his face for some hint of love, of understanding. But all she saw was indifference. "That's not how it works, Ryan," she said quietly. "My parents gave that house to me. It was supposed to be ours when we got married, built on trust, not lies." Ryan put down his mug and ran a hand through his hair. "Emma, you're overreacting. It's just a house. You're acting like I stole something." Her voice broke slightly. "You didn't steal it, but you let your parents act like they own it. You let them humiliate me in my own home." He rolled his eyes. "You always take things too personally. My parents are just proud. Why can't you appreciate that they're trying to include us?" Emma felt her throat tighten. "Include us? They're trying to control everything, the house, the wedding, even me. And you just let them." Ryan stood up, his tone growing cold. "They're my parents, Emma. They've done everything for me. I'm not going to start arguing with them over something that doesn't matter." Her chest tightened with anger and disbelief. "It does matter. It matters because it's about respect. You don't defend me. You don't stand up for me. You just let them take over and pretend it's fine." Ryan shook his head, muttering, "You always have to turn everything into drama." Emma looked at him then, really looked at him, and saw the truth she'd been avoiding. He didn't see her as his equal. To him, her efforts, her independence, even her parents' generosity were just conveniences. For the first time, she realized she was engaged to a man who cared more about keeping his parents happy than protecting her dignity. As Ryan walked out of the kitchen, leaving her standing alone, Emma felt something inside her shift. It wasn't just hurt anymore, it was clarity. The trust she'd once had in him was cracking, piece by piece. And deep down, she knew once it broke completely, nothing would ever be the same again. After that argument with Ryan, things between them grew tense and distant. Emma stopped trying to explain herself, and he stopped pretending to listen. Days passed in silence, and in that silence, Margaret seemed to find her opening. She began showing up more than ever, this time not pretending to help, but taking charge like she owned the place. It started small. One morning, Emma came home from a work errand and noticed the front door locks had been changed. Confused, she called Ryan immediately. "Did you call a locksmith?" she asked. He hesitated. "Oh yeah. Mom said the old locks weren't safe, so she had them replaced." Emma's heart sank. "She what?" "Without even asking me." Ryan sighed. "Emma, it's not a big deal. She just wants to keep us safe." But it was a big deal. It was her house, her keys, and suddenly she didn't even know who had copies anymore. A few days later, Margaret hosted a small gathering at the house while Emma was at work. Emma came home to find several of Ryan's relatives sitting in her living room, laughing and drinking, while Margaret proudly told them, "This is our family home now. Isn't it beautiful?" Emma stood frozen at the door, her heart pounding. "Our family home?" She wanted to scream, but instead, she quietly walked to the kitchen, took a deep breath, and tried not to cry. When the guests left, she confronted Margaret calmly but firmly. "I would appreciate it if you didn't host events in my home without asking." Margaret's polite smile vanished. "Your home? Sweetheart, this house belongs to our family. You're only part of it because of my son." Emma's chest tightened. "With all due respect, your son didn't buy this house. My parents did for me." Margaret stepped closer, her tone sharp. "You think that matters? Once you marry him, everything you have belongs to him, too. That's how family works." Emma stared at her, stunned. There it was, the truth that had been hiding behind every fake smile and friendly suggestion. Margaret didn't just want to be part of their lives, she wanted control. That night, Emma sat alone in the dark living room, staring at the walls her parents had painted with love. For the first time, the house didn't feel warm. It felt invaded, like every corner had someone else's fingerprints on it. Ryan came in late, smelling of beer and exhaustion. She told him what happened, her voice steady but cold. "Your mother told people this was her family's house. She changed my locks. Do you even hear yourself defending that?" Ryan rubbed his forehead. "You're overthinking everything. She just wants to help." Emma laughed bitterly. "Help? She's treating me like I'm a guest in my own home." He didn't answer. He just walked past her, muttering, "You'll understand once you're married." That was the moment Emma knew. She wasn't just fighting for a house anymore. She was fighting for her freedom, her identity, and the right to decide what was hers. And if she didn't stop them soon, she would lose more than just walls and keys. She'd lose herself completely. 2 weeks before the wedding, Emma was alone at home, trying to finish the seating plan for the guests. The air felt heavy. Things between her and Ryan had been distant for weeks. He barely spoke to her unless it was about the wedding or his parents. Still, she kept trying, hoping things might somehow get better once they were married. That afternoon, she went into the study to find a pen. Ryan had left some documents scattered across the desk, and she began tidying them up. As she gathered the papers, she noticed one folder slightly tucked beneath a pile of bills. Something about it caught her eye, her name printed across the top. Curious, she opened it and froze. It was a property document, the same house her parents had gifted her. But what made her blood run cold was the signature line. Her name was there, signed. Yet she had never seen this paper before. Her heart started pounding so loudly she could hear it in her ears. The date on the document was just a week old, and the form listed both her and Ryan as joint owners. Her hands trembled as she read the fine print. He had filed to transfer half the ownership of the property, without her consent. For a long moment, she just stood there, staring at the fake signature, trying to process what she was seeing. The man she had trusted, defended, and loved had forged her name. It wasn't a mistake. It was a betrayal. When Ryan came home later that evening, Emma was still sitting in the living room, the document on the coffee table. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. Her voice was calm, almost too calm. "What is this?" she asked, pointing at the paper. Ryan froze. His eyes flicked to the document, then to her. "Where did you find that?" "In your desk," she said quietly. "Why does it have my forged signature on it?" He opened his mouth, but no words came out. Then he finally muttered, "I was just trying to make things official. Once we're married, the house should belong to both of us anyway." Emma stared at him in disbelief. "So you decided to fake my signature instead of asking me?" Ryan rolled his eyes and said, "You're overreacting again. I was doing what's right for our future." Her chest tightened with anger. "No, Ryan. You were doing what was right for you. You let your parents talk you into this, didn't you?" He didn't answer, but the guilt on his face told her everything. At that moment, something inside Emma broke. The love she had been trying so hard to protect vanished, replaced by cold clarity. He hadn't just disrespected her. He had tried to take what was hers. Without another word, she folded the paper, placed it back on the table, and walked out of the room. She didn't need to argue. The truth was loud enough. That night, as she lay awake, staring into the darkness, she knew one thing for sure. She couldn't marry a man who saw her as property. The wedding might still be 2 weeks away, but her decision was already made. The morning after Emma found the forged papers, she sat at the kitchen table staring at her coffee, her hands cold around the mug. She wasn't crying anymore. She was done crying. The shock had turned into something sharper, resolve. She knew now that Ryan and his parents would never stop trying to take control. They had already crossed every line. It was time for her to take back what was hers. She called her parents first. Her mom answered, hearing the strain in Emma's voice immediately. "Honey, what's wrong?" Emma told them everything, the forged papers, the lies, the silence. Her mom gasped, her dad went quiet. After a moment, her father said firmly, "We'll handle this. You're not alone." The next morning, Emma met with a lawyer her dad recommended. Together, they went over every legal detail of the property. The lawyer confirmed what she feared. If Ryan had filed those documents before she found them, things could have gone badly. But since she caught it in time, they still had options. Within a few days, she transferred the house into a private trust, securing full ownership so no one could ever touch it again. Ryan's name would never appear on any document related to her home. Not now, not ever. She didn't confront him again. She played it carefully, acting normal while quietly preparing her exit. She called the wedding venue and canceled everything. When they asked about the deposit, she told them to send the refund directly to her. Then she went to the bank and withdrew every dollar from their joint account, transferring it to her private one. Every move she made was quiet, precise, and final. When Ryan asked why she seemed distant, she simply said she was tired from wedding stress. He believed her. He didn't see it coming. A few days before what was supposed to be their wedding, Margaret called, excited. "We can't wait to move in after the ceremony. I already picked out our room." Emma forced a polite tone. "That's nice, Margaret. I'll make sure everything's ready." That weekend, while Ryan and his parents were out finalizing last-minute plans, Emma changed every lock in the house. She replaced the security system and updated the ownership records with her lawyer. The house, her house, was now completely protected. On what was supposed to be their wedding day, Ryan and his parents arrived with suitcases, ready to move in. But when they tried their keys, none of them worked. The locks had been changed. Emma opened the door just enough to face them. She held a folder in her hand, the legal proof of ownership. "This house is mine," she said calmly. "You forged my signature, Ryan. You tried to steal from me. Now you have nothing." Margaret's face turned red. "You can't do this," she shouted. Emma didn't argue. She simply handed them a copy of the legal document and closed the door. As they stood outside, stunned and furious, she locked it again, from the inside this time, and walked away without looking back. For the first time in months, her home felt safe. And she finally felt free. Ryan came back later that evening, pounding on the door like a man possessed. His voice echoed through the house as he shouted her name. "Emma, open the door. We need to talk." She stood in the hallway, calm but firm. She wasn't afraid anymore. Slowly, she opened the door just enough to face him. His face was red with anger, and Margaret and Charles stood behind him, both looking furious. "What did you do?" Ryan demanded. "Why did you change the locks? You can't just kick us out like this." Emma didn't flinch. She held up a folder and handed him a set of papers through the small gap in the door. "These are the legal documents," she said evenly. "The house is in my trust now. You tried to steal what wasn't yours, Ryan. Now you have nothing." He stared at the papers, his jaw tightening. "You're being ridiculous. We were supposed to share everything." "No," she said quietly. "You were supposed to respect me. Instead, you lied, forged my signature, and let your parents treat me like a stranger in my own home. I'm done." Margaret stepped forward, her voice sharp and shaking. "You can't treat my son this way. We'll sue you for everything you've got." Emma met her eyes calmly. "You can try, but those documents are legally binding. This house is protected. You can't touch it." Charles snatched the papers from Ryan and scanned them quickly, his face falling as he read the lawyer's seals and signatures. "She's right," he muttered under his breath. "It's all in her name." Margaret turned to Ryan, her voice rising. "You said you handled this. You said the papers were filed." Ryan looked trapped, his anger giving way to embarrassment. I thought they were," he stammered. "She wasn't supposed to find out." Emma almost laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You really thought you could build a life by lying to me?" He tried one last time, his tone softening. "Emma, please. We can fix this. I just wanted us to have a future together." She shook her head slowly. You wanted control, not a future. And I won't live my life being owned by anyone. When she started to close the door, Margaret shouted again, "You'll regret this." No one turns their back on this family. Emma paused, her hand on the doorframe, and looked at them one last time. You already turned your backs on me the moment you tried to take what wasn't yours. Then she closed the door, locked it, and stood quietly for a moment. On the other side, she could still hear Ryan shouting and Margaret cursing, but their voices no longer mattered. She walked to the kitchen, sat down, and finally let out a long breath. The weight she'd been carrying for months started to fade. Outside, Ryan's car eventually pulled away, and silence filled the air again. For the first time in a long time, that silence felt peaceful. The house was truly hers, not because of the papers, but because she had finally taken her life back. Months passed, and life slowly returned to calm. The chaos, the shouting, and the betrayal were behind her now. Emma had spent those first few weeks repairing not just her home, but her peace of mind. Every corner of the house that once held bitterness now held warmth again, her warmth. The walls no longer echoed with arguments or tension. They carried laughter, music, and quiet strength. Each morning, she made herself a cup of coffee and stepped out onto the porch, the cool North Carolina breeze brushing against her face. The sun always rose gently over the yard, casting golden light across the porch railing. It was her favorite part of the day, peaceful, simple, and hers alone. She'd planted roses along the fence line, something she'd always wanted to do, but never could when Margaret had tried to take over the house. Now they bloomed in rich red and pink shades, a small reminder that beauty can grow again after storms. Her parents visited often. They never brought up Ryan or his family again. They didn't need to. The way Emma smiled now said everything. Her mom once told her, "Sweetheart, sometimes losing people is how you find peace." Emma hadn't understood it then, but now, sitting in her quiet home, she finally did. There were moments when she'd think back to that night, the pounding on the door, Ryan's anger, Margaret's threats, and instead of feeling pain, she felt gratitude. They'd shown her exactly who they were. And in doing so, they'd given her the courage to choose herself. Her lawyer had later told her that Ryan tried to contest the ownership one last time, but dropped it quickly when he realized he didn't stand a chance. He and his parents eventually moved to another city, starting over, probably spinning their own version of the story. But Emma didn't care. She'd already closed that chapter. She poured her energy into her work, her friendships, and herself. She even started volunteering at a local women's shelter, helping others who'd faced manipulation or emotional control. She never mentioned names, but she'd share her story sometimes, not as a victim, but as someone who rebuilt her life after betrayal. On one particular morning, she sat on the porch steps, coffee in hand, watching the sun climb higher. The house behind her stood strong, her safe place, her fresh start. She smiled softly, whispering to herself, "They tried to claim my house, but I reclaimed my life." The words felt powerful, final. Not bitter, just true. That's when she realized revenge hadn't been about the legal win or the locked doors. It had been about freedom. She had taken back control of her story, her peace, her future. And in that quiet morning light, with the sound of birds and the smell of coffee, Emma knew she had finally found what she was searching for all along. Not a perfect family, not a fairy tale wedding, but the kind of peace that comes from never letting anyone own your happiness again.